All right, welcome in everyone. A very exciting virtual homecoming here at Wingate University for 2020. Things are certainly different this year, but we are making do. And I am joined by a very special guest, class of 1990, John Crooke. John is a very accomplished alum, some really cool stuff in his past, and obviously a very successful alum too. We're going to jump in and ask him a few questions, get to know John a little better. So first, John, how are you doing today? And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, doing well, Spencer. Thanks. Yeah, happy to be a part of it. It's awesome that you guys could pull something together under these circumstances and still get everybody from the many years at Wingate all together. So, doing great. Glad to be here and be a part of it.
So first, I want to start with your background. Obviously, We'll get to your time as a student here at Wingate, but tell us a little bit pre-Wingate. Where are you from, which I think is very interesting, and then how did you arrive at the university?
Well, you know what's interesting. There is no pre-Wingate for me because I'm actually from Wingate. So, grew up in Wingate, grew up on campus. Right, my grandfather was president of the university back in the day. In fact, it's the Burris Building, C.C. Burris. That's my grandfather. So I have a long history connection with university, family connections. So it's always been, it's just always been part of me. It was my home. It was also, from little, just a little boy, always, it kind of felt like that's where I'd be going to school. So, did that, went to a local high school, Forest Hills, which is down 74, as everybody knows, or most people know, and came to Wingate on a basketball scholarship in 1986. So that was, my commute when my parents dropped me off was about a 4-block walk to Helms Dorm, and off we go. But it was cool because I was always involved in the university even before, like in my high school years. I was working at Wingate's basketball camps. I was there every summer. It's just always, when I was a kid, I was going over to concerts in the old Sanders Sykes Gymnasium and, seeing rock shows. So it's just something that's always been a part of who I am.
I think it's awesome. I mean, you hear of a lot of kids that grew up in an area near a school and they want to go off to another school. You definitely never felt like that, which I think is awesome.
I mean, it's like, I think all of us could have, you look to spread your wings a bit, right? And kind of, stretch out, but it certainly was in my head, and at the time when basketball was such an important thing to me and was ultimately going to contribute to my education, I looked at a lot of different places, and other places looked at me, but it was, I don't know, it just felt right, and it's like looking back on it now, thinking about where the road that my life took and how music became such an important part of it, and it was in the people that were a part of my life, right, that became we were all the foundation of what led to a career in music. I don't know that it would have worked anywhere else, right? It just, sometimes you find places and sometimes they find you. And I think in my case, it was the same, like it was both ways, right?
So you mentioned basketball. You're a basketball fan, so I want to spend some time on this. so you got a scholarship to play here at Wingate. There's a few things I want to touch on. Number one, how did you get into hoops in high school and what led to wanting to play? And then number two, there's apparently a legendary one-on-one game that went on in Sanders Sykes, and it might have involved Dr. Rhett Brown and John Crooke. So I want to hear about that game as well.
Well, basketball, you're from North Carolina. Dean Smith is what got me into basketball. It's like you grew up and it's in your DNA, right? And back in the day, you were either Carolina State, dare I say Duke, or Wake Forest, and I was a Heels guy, and so I grew up, worshiping Carolina basketball, and then apparently or allegedly someone noted that I had some skills, and so I played through high school, and that was part of what landed me at Wingate. Yeah, it's funny, that game with me and Rhett, because obviously Rhett and I were in school together, and Rhett was either a cornerback or a safety on the football team, so he let's say that Rhett had multi-dimensional athletic abilities, and so it was not surprising that he could play ball. I don't remember exactly what happened other than in the interest of protocol. I will say Rhett probably took me down pretty easily. one-on-one Sanders Sykes. I'm sure that's what happened. He probably dropped 20 on me before I even got the ball back.
I don't know if you're just being really nice to our president, or if I don't know if that's the truth or not.
I don't know. Maybe the thing to do is when strap on some knee braces, at least in my case, and maybe Rhett and I go one-on-one for charity again in Cuddy Arena.
That's awesome. So let's. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say no. I hadn't thought about that in a long time. That's a fun memory. That's going deep into the archives, Spencer. You're pulling them deep.
Well, in the middle of the interview here, I got something in my ear. You need to ask about the Dr. Brown
you got
one-on-one game. So
there you go.
So let's talk about music's obviously your passion. It's certainly been something it's been part of your life, and you had a few bands back in the day. I know that you still play. You're going to play for us as part of our virtual homecoming entertainment. Right. So talk a little bit about how you got into music, how you became so successful, and then the bands that you were a part of.
Yeah, it's, music's always been something that hovered around me, and I hovered around growing up. My family, musical, always loved music, was involved in band in high school, which was great, and drum corps and all that. And it was always something really important, but it never really connected to me as maybe, I would say a career, or even something beyond just extracurricular, you know what I mean? And, but then, I think we all have those moments in our lives. So we got 2 or 3 of them where you just hard pivot, right? Something happens and you hard pivot and you go another direction. And it was one of those for me was my freshman year at Wingate. Like I said, I was basketball obsessed. I was playing basketball on the basketball team. We were out during, I don't know if it's still there, but back in Helms dorm, there used to be a court, like a full court between the dorms, right? And we were out there playing, and this would have been fall of my freshman year, I guess, fall of 86, winter 86. And we're playing the ball, ball bounces into a dumpster, which was at the end of the blacktop. And I drew the short straw, I jumped in, had to get the ball out, threw the ball out. Underneath was a cassette, an REM cassette, right? REM record, which was their 3rd record, Fables of the Reconstruction. So, people have to remember, this was pre-access to music on every device by every streaming service, right? This was pre-internet. This was, in Wingate, small town, not a lot of radio to speak of that wasn't Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, and not a lot of access to live music. So, you had to sweat to find music. And when you found it, you soaked it up if you liked it, right? And so I was like, yeah, I think I've heard of REM, right? And I took the cassette back, and I was living in Helms at the time, and I put the cassette in. And I remember it like it was yesterday. It was queued up to a song called Life and How to Live It, on the first song on the second side of that record. And it just blew my mind. I don't know what it was. It was just this visceral, existential moment where I said, I want to do that. And that became my North Star, REM. And then obviously that palette expanded and started to compound on itself. And I really went out and discovered a lot of music at the time that was not discoverable, unless you just really went head down and tried to find it. But it was that moment. And I went to my parents. I walked the 4 blocks back to my house and said, look, this is going to be shocking, but I want to quit basketball. And to their credit, they, very calmly kind of took that in. And, what does that mean? And sort of talked about how what that meant, right? And I was like, I don't know that I know what it means yet. But what I know is this is what I want to do. So I said, okay, well, here's the rule. Here's the deal. And you're not going to break the deal. It's just my classic dad Zen master just said, okay, here we go. Bought me a guitar, bought me an amp. My mom had a 78 Suburban that she gave the band once we formed it. At the time, in Hardsoul, Brandon Helms, who was going to be a student the following year, his parents were both professors at the college in music and in ceramics and art. Brandon and I went to high school together. At the same time, Chris Michael, who was a senior at Wingate, I believe, that year, might have just graduated. He was a local. We had gone to high school together and all kind of, knew each other. And we formed a band. And my dad said, here's the deal. You're walking across the stage with that diploma. You can do whatever you need to do, but you're gonna stay in school. You're gonna stay focused, and we'll support you.
That's awesome.
Doing this.
So
it was, it's funny, man, being a parent, I realize now, I've got a 9-year-old, I realize how immeasurably challenging that is to have that level of patience and perspective, and knowing that you're quietly anxious and fearful of where your kids are going and what they're doing and how they're doing it and who they're going to become. So looking back on it, it's pretty monumental. But that's what I did. Sorry, that was long-winded, but that's ultimately what happened. Went out, bought a guitar, and Brandon and Chris and I formed a band. We had a buddy of mine who was a freshman at Wingate at the time named Eric Wallace. Jack Barnes was another guy that was from high school. We all formed a band. I think our very first show was on the deck of the Student Center the following spring of '87. And before we knew it, we were playing 2 nights a week, Charlotte, Columbia. Before we knew it, it was 3 nights a week, Winston, Charlotte, Columbia, Chapel Hill. Before we knew it, it was 4 nights a week, add Raleigh, add Roanoke, Virginia, add Tallahassee, Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, Athens, Georgia. We were traveling out all week, playing a show, driving back and going to class. I scheduled all of my classes so that I had, early morning classes with no afternoon lab, so we could get out, get in the Suburban and take off. We're doing homework and everything on the road, and we're coming back. And by the time I was a senior, I literally walked off with my diploma, cap and gown, handed it to my parents. Here's my diploma, took off my cap and gown, jumped in a Suburban, and we were gone for 8 weeks touring. So it was a pretty intense few years, but it's kind of how it happened. We never really looked back at that point.
I mean, what an experience, right, for a kid college age.
Oh, man.
It was Hardsoul Poets.
The Beatniks were the first band.
Okay, I'm sorry. The
Beatniks. Actually, we may have been the Rabid Delegates for about 3 weeks. I think the first show was actually under Rabid Delegates at the Student Center, which we found that picture. I should have tried to track that down because we've got photo evidence of that gig. But yeah, then it was the Beatniks for a period of time, and then we actually, the building is gone, but if you know out in the amphitheater where from behind the Burris building it slopes down to the main thoroughfare, there used to be Laney Hall.
Sure.
Was a building that was there, was a small theater, art theater. We actually did a show at Laney Hall a few years later where we changed over from the Beatniks to Hardsoul Poets and announced the name change to 50 screaming friends and sophomores and juniors and seniors from Wingate, and that was it. And then we, after Hardsoul sort of began to find its ceiling, and then we, myself and a few others launched Jolene shortly thereafter. And I mean, really from about '87, from that first tour to 2002, when I moved to Los Angeles and had to go reinvent again. That's what we did. We were on the road 11 months out of the year, all over the world. Every day was Saturday. It was great. Yeah.
So I'm curious, Hardsoul Poets and the Beatniks, that sound, that genre of music, very different from Jolene. So talk about that pivot a little bit.
I mean, I think it was time, place, geolocation. Hardsoul, and even in Jolene to some degree too, we were all still trying to figure out what it was and who we were, right? As a band, as, creative people coming together trying to make noise that sounds like something that other people want to listen to, right? And we were still kind of finding that path. And once, with Jolene, it was just of a time. Like we kind of fell into a group of bands like Whiskey Town and Ryan Adams and some other folks out of Chapel Hill. We were sort of naturally from North Carolina, so we wanted to embrace that heritage of, country music is a stretch because country is so wide and defined, but I think that sort of Southern Gothic kind of thread, you know what I mean? But we were also Anglophiles, we were listening to as much REM and Doc Watson at the same time we were listening to the Smiths and Echo and the Bunnymen and, New Orleans brass music. So it all kind of started to just, I don't know, you just kind of get more competent and capable in where you're going, right? And it just is, and it also just kind of happens. I think it was just a natural evolution of who we were as songwriters. And then it changed again. Jolene, actually, those first couple of records, it changed again and started to really lean into that loud, quiet, sometimes cacophonous, sometimes intimate and small, music that was happening at the time. Travis, Radiohead, Keane, the Chameleons, a lot of Brit bands. It was just one of those things that found us too,
Sure. So what got you to LA originally, and then tell us a little bit about what you're doing now that we've heard a lot about you.
I'll try to keep this one as more brief than my last response. It's LA. So Jolene was on tour. We were over in Europe. We'd been there a few months. We had gone through the inevitable other side of a major label deal. We were signed to Warner Brothers and Sire for a couple of records. And we were out touring, and it's just that moment where you realize you got to do something else. I mean, we had a good run, trust me. It was just a moment of clarity where we were in London playing our final show of that particular tour. It was great. It was awesome. Sold out house. We're downstairs in the bowels of the Soho Club in London. People banging on the thing, come back up and do an encore. And I remember going, this is probably the last show I'm going to play with Jolene. Turns out it wasn't. We had some reunion shows, but at the time it felt pretty big. I said, because the last thing I wanted was to end up in, I don't know, pick a random place somewhere in America on a Tuesday night for $30 when it all starts to deconstruct. So a friend of mine who I'd been working with sort of on the side, who had a brand strategy and architecture design firm out of Charlotte, very successful firm called Shook Kelly. I had been cool hunting for Shook Kelly, doing trend reports while we were touring. I was out, people watching and doing cultural trend reports, coming back, meeting with their design team. It was a way for me to make extra cash. He offered me the opportunity to move to LA and join the brand strategy team and open up the LA office with them. And Spencer, I'll tell you, it was one of those same kind of monumental, pivotal moments. I just ripped the Band-Aid off and said, I got to do it or I'm going to be 50 years old and staring up at something I can't move on from. And that's just me. Every artist, every creative person doesn't have that story where, and a lot of my deep friends that are my tribe and our tribe and all this, still doing it and doing it well. I just knew for me, I needed to reinvent. So I flew straight from London. I didn't even stop back in Charlotte. I flew straight from London, somehow convinced a friend of mine to pack up all my stuff at a storage space in an apartment off Pecan Avenue in Charlotte, and I landed in LA on a Thursday, and by Monday I was in the office beginning to work on those projects. I had to go back to Europe one more time, so I was in LA for like 30 days. I had to go back on another tour with another band for a month, and then that was 2002. Here I am 18 years later, 19 years later.
Well, you found a lot of success in being able to make that hard pivot, as you referenced, which I think is something that's hard for people, and it's awesome, but it's so cool. I mean, you were massively successful in the music industry.
Massively is a stretch, my friend. I would say moderately successful.
You made it a long ways, and I would say
that's true.
A lot farther than most do. So it's so cool, kid from Wingate who went to Wingate University. It's just such a cool story. So switching gears a little bit, John, let's talk about the university a little bit. Talk about some of your favorite memories, some people from here that impacted your life, maybe some of your favorite homecoming memories as well.
I'll work in reverse order. So I think, honestly, one of my favorite homecoming memories was 2015, right? When we came back, when Hardsoul came back, and it was just very serendipitously kind of all came together, and we did the reunion show, right? I think it was, we played a reunion show in Charlotte, and then Rhett and I started talking about it, and he was like, man, let's do something else, right? Maybe it was 16, I'll be honest with you, I'm losing track of dates, especially in where we are now, right? Every day looks like the one before it and the one's coming up.
No question.
But that was it was pretty special because I think it was such a great turnout. There were probably 400 people there, right? And it became such it really was truly a reunion, and I thought about it. I'm not sure how many, all of the memories back in the day, I missed most of them because I was on tour. All the homecomings. I was somewhere halfway around the world. I wasn't around, and if we were, it was a rarity. So it was kind of nice actually to have it happen so recently and be special. some of the people that impact, I mean, it's crazy because there's so many professors and people that had an impact on me. I mean, not only as a student, but I mean, as a person, I think, and sort of giving me the room to be who I am. Dr. Beverly Christopher, number one. She was my professor, but she was a second mother first. I've known her my entire life, and my family and her family, we've known each other forever. But it was interesting to have that kind of transition with someone that I knew really as, a parent of a friend into her English class my freshman year, and like, wide-eyed and having to wake up. I mean, she really had an impact on me, and truly my love for literature, and I think really sort of finding that space, in that headspace to really embrace it rather than not treat it as an exercise, but treat it as exercise. And, and then also Walter Woodson, who's no longer with us, but was a communications professor during my tenure at Wingate, local guy. I knew him forever. Here's what I really loved about Dr. Woodson is he recognized in me that this is what I was doing, right? That art and music was again, I'll say it again, a North Star for me. And he gave me the room to do that, right? He gave me the room to explore that, even sometimes as part of the curriculum, right? To really lean in on music and art as a way to express how I wanted to function as a student. Dr. Sykes, an English professor, allowed me to write my senior thesis on REM as a business. How do you take a band and operate it as a business? You've got creative individuals that are on a stage every night trying to sell a creative idea to an audience that has to consume that idea. You've got shareholders and stakeholders and board of directors in your label, management, attorney, legal, all of the engine behind you. You got to make money. You got to create product. You got to sell product. You got to make margin on that product. All of how you function a band and using them as a reference as a business entity. That was, I asked the question. I put my hand up and said, hey, can I do this? Credit him for saying, yeah, you can do that. It's got to fit within this mold. It's got to fit. You got to hit all of these KPIs and the things I need you to hit as part of the assignment. But sounds like that's an interesting model. Go do it. So, I think that's who comes to mind right off the top of my head. But, the beauty of Wingate University, in my view, and I think everyone that's attended Wingate and attends there now would say this, is the size and scale and the intimacy and the relationships you have not only with other students, but with your professors or administration. It's like some people need it, some people don't. Some people can be one person at a school of 45,000 in a classroom of 300 and sit and, plug in, plug out. It wasn't for me. And I think that's, I'm not sure I could begin to list everyone that had an impact on me. It's,
yeah, 100.
Runs pretty wide and deep,
100%. What you just said. I think there's a few common denominators of anybody that's watching this right now. Certainly, love your stories about the folks that impacted you and helped drive you into the direction that was natural to John Crooke. But like you said, the family feel that the college at one time had, that the university has now, I don't think that will never go away. That will never leave and not be a very important piece of fabric to the university. It's
rare to get, you can get academic, you can get support academically, but Spencer, you're exactly right. It's rare. But to have that, I think family is a good way to look at it. When you have that emotional support to be who you are and to allow you to do that, and it's like you can't, actually I can't say that because I didn't go to a large university, but I think about Carolina. I don't know that I would have done well at Carolina, because I wouldn't have made the basketball team as a walk-on as much as I would have liked to have believed it, right? And the music scene's amazing, but I think what I needed was a smaller incubator, especially at that time in my life, it without question has affected who I am today as, 52-year-old man, no question. And I don't know that you can get that other places. Like it's special in many ways. It's very special in that way. Wingate.
Well said. Well said. All right, as we wrap here, John, I'm curious, is there anything interesting about you? A good story maybe that you have that people might find interesting?
All right, so I'll keep the theme going. All right, so one is I got dunked on by Michael Jordan. So at a pickup, well, I mean, I was at Dean Smith Basketball School up in Chapel Hill. I think it was in my sophomore, junior year, and they picked a collection of campers at the end of the week and former Carolina players to play in an exhibition game for all the parents before they send us back home. Right. I was one of the campers. Jordan was one of the players, among others like James Worthy and Jimmy Black. It was awesome because it was just not long after they won the national championship against Georgetown, which was pretty amazing. I'm in the game. I'm coming down. I was a point guard. I, send the ball to the wing. Somehow gets mishandled. Jordan steals it. He does something, acrobatic like to steal it, which was amazing. I'm backing down the court and say, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to set down at the elbow. I'm going to take a charge. I'm going to take a charge, and Dean Smith's going to walk over and clap his hands and pull me up and say, great job, son. That was going to be great. Bad idea. I knew at the moment I planted my feet, because I planted my feet at the elbow. Jordan jumped over me. The next thing I saw are two Jordans going by my ears. I heard the dunk, and he just handed me the ball, laughed at me, and went down the court. So that was also in front of, I don't know how many hundreds, if not thousands of people, of parents and scouts.
Yeah. So you can attest.
Yeah, maybe
right?
I would say maybe that was the moment where I realized basketball is not going to be my my end game. No, that was kind of awesome. It was pretty fun and pretty amazing to get dunked on by Jordan. And then
so cool, John. Thanks so much, and thanks so much
Absolutely.
for what you're doing for us in our entertainment for this virtual homecoming 2020. So I'm going to get out of the way, and we're going to get to John's performance now. John Crooke, class of 1990. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Spencer.